Welcome, everyone. My name is Krithika Manohar. I'm part of the product team at SupportLogic. And today we are going to be talking about case routing. It is one of the crucial steps to deliver a great support experience. Now, you may ask, now we have AI agents, agentic workflow, how is this relevant? Yes, AI agents undoubtedly are going to make self service more powerful, more impactful. We are going to be able to resolve cases more proactively. You'll be able to handle high volume in a much more automated way and make it more personalized. Everything great. But there are going to be some complex cases which still need a human to come in and troubleshoot and resolve. And when that happens, we want to make sure that the right person is at the job. So in today, like Karan mentioned earlier, even before all the hype about AI and agentic workflows that you're hearing in the industry today, we built a multimodal case routing agent 2 to 3 years ago, actually 2021, around that time frame, and many of our customers are already using it. And this is something that we have case studies, and today in this session, we'll be exploring how this routing agent gives you a predictive, skill-based, dynamic, intelligent routing capability. With that, let's get started. All right, so this is a no-brainer. I'm preaching to the choir here. When there is a case assignment need to be done, it has to be precise, it has to be efficient. We need to make sure that every case that comes in gets assigned to the right person who has the right skill set so that they're able to resolve the case efficiently. All good. But we also want to make sure that the agents are not getting burnt out. We want to make sure that their workload is balanced. And that is critical because that also boosts their productivity and we are able to then prioritize more efficiently. The net effect is that in the end, we are not only able to give a quick resolution, but also a happy customer who's happy interacting with your support team. And a quick analogy about case assignment, which it's like your heart and brain, right? Cases keep coming in, every few seconds, this case is coming in. We need a system that is smart to assign these cases at a very constant pace, no disturbance. But at the same time, we need a brain support leader who's able to guide how the case assignment needs to happen, either at the early stage or whenever there is a need to step in and make changes. Now, before we go and explore what SupportLogic case routing offers, let's look at some of the traditional methods that that people are using. Now, for example, we have the manual push is where a person is actually monitoring every case that comes in and manually assigning it to a person. Very manual will not scale. And then we have the automated push, in which case you could be using a static method. Could be rule-based, it could be round-robin, based on the case metadata. There's a couple of methods over here through which case gets pushed directly to the agent. Again, we'll come to the challenges later. And there's the pull mechanism, wherein this is manual, where an agent is actually cherry-picking the case from queue. And we know the problem with this situation where, the agent or the support engineer is typically picking cases which they are familiar with, they've worked in the past, easy. So there could be challenges where we might be dropping cases which are of higher priority. Now, we also have an automated push where you could set up multiple queues and then you could be pushing your cases to those multiple queues and then agents again come and cherry pick from those queues. Similar problems exist. Now, with all of these traditional methods, these are the core problems we would see. A bias in assignment. Now, be it a manual routing or an automatic routing, it could result in an unconscious bias in the assignment, leading to some of your agents overworked while some of them are underutilized. Now, why does this happen? It's because these systems are incapable of adapting to the evolving case volume or the agent or staffing changes that happen. For example, if a support engineer is really just overwhelmed and not available, the system needs to be dynamic and predict that particular agent is not available and hence I need to assign it to somebody. When that doesn't happen, then we run into longer resolution times. And then we have the skill set. Now, especially when we are talking about complex B2B tech support, we need support engineers who are who have a very strong product experience, domain experience. They understand the product in and out, the configurations, integrations, and whatnot. So if, again, in this case, a case doesn't end up with the right person with the right skill set, we risk a very different case outcome, which would have been positive otherwise. And lack of flexibility, again, as long as the rules are static, we are not able to look into the real-time context of the case. What do I mean by that? When we are looking at a case, it's not just the case metadata. It's about the sentiment in the case. It's what is the probability of the case escalating? What is the experience of the customer that logged this case? Have they logged many other cases besides this? So all of this play into being able to flexibly identify the right person. Then the last one is, of course, scalability. We need to be able to scale as you grow, your customers grow. We need to be able to scale. And with the traditional methods, that's going to be a challenge. We want to get away from that and leverage SupportLogic, the intelligent case assignment. What do? We look at all the agents that are available, and we have a very sophisticated multi-model system that looks at all the possible agents, and it goes parameter by parameter, and it keeps narrowing it down till the time we get to the right agent. Now, how do we do this? We'll go in detail. Now, the key thing here is we have a very sophisticated system that can be 100% automated. All of your cases that come in can be assigned to an agent without anybody intervening. But we have heard from our customers time and again that may not work all the time, because there could be scenarios where a human wants to actually look at an escalated case, or maybe there is a case from a strategic account for which a renewal is coming up. There might be some hand-holding required in some case, and hence manual assignment, an intelligent manual assignment becomes necessary. So what we offer is a hybrid approach. So SupportLogic's intelligent case assignment, the underlying framework, it powers both the intelligent manual assignment framework as well as the fully automated AI assignment. Underlying the models are exactly the same. Now, I've been talking about models a lot. Now, what do we have? So it is built on these 5 key pillars: time overlap, skills match, customer experience, bandwidth, and an assignment balance which overlays all of this. Now, each one of these has multiple ML models underneath it, and they all work together in unison to come up with a weighted average for us to determine the right best agent. Let's go one at a time. Time overlap. So when a case comes in, we don't want to assign this case to an agent that's going to pick it up 3 days later. We want somebody that's available now to pick up the case, understand the context. If needed, talk to the reporter, get all the required information for resolving the case. So for that to happen, we have an agent's shift system that we can manage within SupportLogic, wherein you can define assignment hours for every agent. So we will honor that. But let's say you say, I don't want to maintain any of them. That's fine. We have a time series ML model which will look at all the past cases that this agent has handled and can predict which agent is going, like what times an agent will be available. Likewise, we also have another time series model which will look at all the cases that the reporter has logged and predict what times the requester will be available. So then we match up the 2 time series to identify what the overlapping time is. What is the overlapping time between the reporter and the requester? And based on that, we compute a score. The score, higher the overlap, the higher the score. And of course, for all of this, we do consider facts like, is the agent out of office? Then we will make sure that person is not included, weekends, and so on. All right, the next one is our skills match. Now, as we have clearly established, we want to make sure we want to assign the case to the most skilled person. Now, how do we do this? We have 3 models that work underneath. First is our case skills model. Now, in the case skills model, what we do is it's pre-trained, it's trained based on historical cases. So whenever a case comes in, we extract the skills on that particular case, and then we look at all the similar cases in the past, and then we are able to predict what additional skills this case will require from the time it opened to the time it closed. So let's say when the case was logged, there was a skill reported, skill A, but then our model predicts with accuracy that it needs skill B and C for it to be resolved. Or maybe it also needs a skill D. So we are able to predict the skill required to resolve a case. Likewise, we also look at the agent skills. Now, we look at all the cases that the agent has worked on, and we extract the skills from those cases. And again, we only look at the cases where the agent actually contributed. So with that, we are able to do a weighted distribution based on which we know that, okay, if an agent has worked on many cases with the same skill, we give him a higher score. But we also apply an inverted frequency, or inverted weightage. So what is that? Let's say every agent in your organization has the same skill, and every case they work on, they have the same skill, which means that the skill really is not very meaningful. It's not defining. So we don't want to consider that skill as an important skill. So we weight that lower. So with that, we roll it up and we are able to get the agent skill scores. We got the case skill score, we got the agent skill score. Now, one key thing that I want to talk about the agent skills is what we have heard is, hey, what about we have agents, support engineers that we onboard on a regular basis and they don't have historical cases. Then how do I get my agent skill score? So what we have introduced now is the ability to add skills for your support engineers from the UI. So you can refer, we have keywords and ontology system where you can actually maintain based on your organization needs. You can list down all the skills and keywords that are relevant for your industry and domain. And we can assign those skills to these agents. So it's not just ML detected skills, but we can also add manually, you can add skills to your agents. And once these two skills are matched up, now we are able to we do a probabilistic matching to identify the skills match score, which on the top there. All right, the next one is customer experience. Now, every time, let's say a case comes in from the same customer, we don't want to assign randomly a case from the same customer to a different team or a different person, because then they have zero context about the customer. And then maybe even it just takes a longer time for them to understand the history and start working on the case. At the same time, we don't want to end up assigning a case to a person with whom the customer had a bad experience in the past. So we're quite cognizant of all of that. We want to absolutely be sure that the person we are assigning the case to has had a good customer experience. How do we do that? We look at all the cases that the agent has worked on that were logged by this customer. So we take a list of all those cases, and then we have a case performance model, which looks at each of these cases and sees what was the sentiment of the case when the agent was actually working on the case. And we also take care to not penalize the agent in case an escalated case was handed over to him, because that's not his or her fault. We want to make sure that if, let's say, the case escalated while the agent was working on the case, then we will impact the performance score of the agent, not otherwise. So we're very careful to understand when the agent is working on a particular case and determine the performance of the agent on the case based on the sentiment, escalation, and all the other factors. Now, we take every case, we do a performance score, we roll up all the cases that this agent has handled for a given customer. And once we roll it up, we get the customer history score. And that's what you see there. Yes. Is it okay if we can reserve the question to the end? Thank you. And then the next one is bandwidth. Now, when we say bandwidth, we're referring to the backlog of the agent. But it doesn't simply mean the list of all the cases. It's just not a simple number, but it's more than that. Because the priority of the case in the backlog, the status of the case in the backlog will make a big difference. One person might be having 20 cases, of which 19 are actually in solution proposed. Just one is in progress, which means that person actually has a lot of bandwidth, although there are 20 in his backlog. And the other might be having 20, of which like 15 are in progress, one is escalated. So we need to be understanding the context as well. So all of that information is actually configurable. You can specify how the priority and status should impact the backlog weightage calculation. The bandwidth weightage calculation. And not just that, we don't just assign a hard number to say, okay, if an agent's backlog reaches 20, that's a lot. We cannot say that because we understand that every customer is going to have a different case volume. And for some customers, a support engineer handling 50 cases at a time may just be business as usual. But for another customer, 50 cases at a time may be all hands on deck situation. That's just not okay. So that is again another aspect that can be configured where you can specify what is the right bandwidth for you that's applicable for you, and accordingly, and based on the weightage that we assign to the priority and status, we will calculate the bandwidth score. And lastly, we have this assignment balance, which sits on top of all the models that I just talked about. Now, what does it do? We do not want to penalize your rock star support engineers. Just because somebody is just churning through their backlog and being very efficient and resolving their cases doesn't mean you just hand them over the next case right after they finish one. So what we can do is we can set a time period. It's almost like you want to ice out your agent for some time. You say, okay, you know what? I'm not going to assign a case for the next 250 minutes, or you can configure like for how many minutes this person needs to be iced out. And you can also say by what weightage the score should be reduced. So what that means is this person he or she is not going to be completely eliminated from assignment. They will still be presented as your recommended agents, but the overall weightage of the score will be reduced so that they're going to be lower in the rank. So with that, it gives you a much more balanced view of how you assign the cases to your different agents. Now, all these ML models that are sitting under these 5 pillars, they all work together. And in the end, we get a weighted list of recommended agents. And the score that you see on the top right corner, 83%, 58%, that is the final score based on which we give you the recommended list. So what are the steps that are required for you to make this really successful? There are a couple of things here. One is we need to have a very strong keywords and ontology set up in the system. This is something the SupportLogic SA team can really help with. To understand what keywords and skills actually matter to you, we can create a catalog of that, and that can be used for our skills extraction model. And the next one is the virtual team. Now, we can work with one person at a time, but when we talk scale and we're talking multiple teams, it is just not scalable to set up this whole assignment model agent by agent. So we want to group them all into a virtual team or even roll them up into a virtual organization, and then we go ahead with the assignment. The next one is around shifts. Shifts is ability for you to identify you can define any number of shifts based on your business need, and you can assign the support engineer to the shifts. And within the shifts, you can define what their assignment hours should look like, working hours should look like. I'll show all of this to you in a bit. And then we have the virtual queue. So this is where we will group all the cases based on a certain case criteria so that we are able to handle different queues in a different way. And the last one is the auto-assignment rules. Now, as I mentioned earlier, our routing agent, the ICA framework, in short for Intelligent Case Assignment, it powers both the 100% auto-assignment as well as your manual. If it is auto-assignment, we provide a lot of rules that sit on top of the auto-assignment to control. So it's not like a complete black box. You can still have some ways for you to control how the auto-assignment should happen. So with that, I am going to go to the system and give you a quick demo of everything we just discussed. Coming. All right. So I am now in the assignment board. So I'm going to start off with the unassigned cases. We'll start with how manual assignment works, and then we will go into how the automatic assignment looks like. Now, here you will see that these are the unassigned cases. I have filtered all the cases that have landed in this queue called virtual queue A. And this first case, I'm just going to pick a first one here. Here it is, it's unassigned. And you see a couple of queues here. And earlier I mentioned about the concept of virtual queues. So a case could have met the criteria to fall into more than one queue. Now in this case, the Central Coast Miner, this particular case has qualified for one queue, two, and actually there's two more here. So total 4 queues it has qualified. So it's sitting in those 4 queues, and each of these queues can have a set of agents that are assigned. So now we're going to look at all the agents for each one of these queues, and our ML engine is going to assess each one of them based on the 5 pillars that we discussed and recommend that most eligible agent. So that's what you mean here by matching queues. So it's looking at all the queues. Now here you see the top 3. Kathy is the one that has the highest percentage weight. The first one is, okay, so maybe I show this one, which is better maybe. All right, so the time overlap is where we look at the requester's availability, the active hours of the requester, who is Liam Rose here, and the active hours of the recommended engineer. And based on the 2 active hours, we are able to determine the time overlap, and the score that you see here is based on that. The next one is the skills. Now, the skills that you see here are automatically determined by the agent skills model. Now, it's also going behind the scenes, the case skills model is also in the play, and it is doing the probabilistic matching to look at the skills that the agent has, matches it with the skills that the case needs, and that is how it has come up with a 100% skill match. So this person has a 83%, while this person has a 77% skill match, and this one has a 100% skill match. And then we have the customer experience. Now this is where in this particular example, it looks like Ujjwal doesn't really have a experience working on cases with this customer. But let's look at another one, maybe 20%. Okay, and not a good example, but I'll try to find another one. Now 20% is our baseline score. We start there, and every time we see that there is a negative experience that an agent had with a customer, we drop that down. If it is a positive experience, we bump it up. And then we have the bandwidth. Now, as I mentioned earlier, it is looking at the status of the cases, and it is looking at the priority. And based on that, it is able to compute the actual bandwidth that the agent has available to take on this case. Now, what we also do is we look at the size of the case. It's not every case is equal. Some cases may be complex, some of them easy to resolve. So we assess the complexity level of the case, and then we look at the bandwidth of the case and see if this person actually has enough time to solve this complex case. So that's another factor that's playing in when we are recommending somebody as for assignment here. And then you see there is no recent assignment in case of Kathy and Ujjwal, but we do have a recent assignment penalty that has been assigned for Jacob. So you can see that the penalty was 240 minutes, which means that we are icing him out for 240 minutes, of which a certain time has elapsed already, and because of which his score, maybe this person was the best person, but because of the recent penalty score, the ranking lowered him down. Not just that, we can also look at all the agents that are recommended, not just the top 3. You can go ahead and see everybody else that could be assigned to the case. And this, like I mentioned earlier, is looking at all the queues in which this case was qualified for. It's looking at, I think we have 5 cases, but let's say I don't want to assign an agent from every queue. You can choose to say, I only want to look at agents from, this particular queue. You can just filter it here and say, okay, show me just agents from that queue. Again, our ML model will run, identify the agents from that assigned to that queue alone, and it will recommend you the right person. And you could also look at all the agents. So right now, what we do is we hide all the agents that are reached the backlog limit in this case. Like, I'll come to what backlog limit means, but we also hide agents that are out of office and so on. But let's say as a manager, you want to override something, you can always choose to do that. Or in this case, it's grayed out, you can't do that. And then we have the ability to also find a new person if you want to just disregard everything and assign somebody altogether new. So that's with our manual assignment. Now let's look at some of the key things. Remember the steps that I talked about we need to take care of before auto assignment works? We're going to go through each one of those. The first one is the agent insights. All right, so here at the agent level, there are a couple of things that we can use that will impact how the cases get assigned. For example, the out of office. Now here we had the ability to manually set the out of office using the agent's calendar. We can also set some capacity limits. For example, I can set the active backlog limit to a hard number and say, do not assign cases more than 50 cases. This is the max limit. And the message, if you recall from the previous screen, where for the first agent, there was a message which said active backlog limit reached. That's because we set a limit on that agent. And you can also set an hourly assignment limit. You can say, hey, you know what? Do not assign more than 5 cases in 10 hours, in 20 hours, whatever that is. So all of this is configurable. It just gives you a little bit more flexibility, which so that the model that we have can honor all of these configurations. And then we have the skills here. So these are the automatically detected skills. Like I mentioned earlier, if you have an agent, a new onboarded engineer that has no prior history of cases, but has a lot of skills, you can come in here and assign skills to that person right from here. And then we talked about virtual teams. So this is where you would set up. So for example, here you have, these are the 3 engineers. We have a means to group them into a team. You can also group multiple teams into an organization. So this is just from an operational perspective, it's a lot more easier for you to set up the assignment more efficiently. Now let's go to the shift management, which is another setup that will help you really ensure that the auto assignment works fine. Now here, this is the board where you can see all the shifts that have been created, and if you hover over a shift, you can see the agents that are assigned to this particular shift. You can actually edit it as well. I just want to show you one thing here. So I talked about something called assignment hours and working hours. So our automatic assignment honors the settings over here. So if, let's say, for the agents that are on this particular shift, you say the assignment hours are only Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and it is only this particular hours, we will make sure that we honor that and include them in the auto assignment model only if these conditions are met. And there's also a concept of working hours where you can say, hey, I don't want assignment hours because my agent may be available for assignment, but they're working at a different schedule. Assign only when they're actually working. That's also possible. Now, these are required for our automatic routing agent to work, because without this, it's a little difficult for us to understand when to assign, not to assign. Now, let's look at the last setup here, which is the queue system. Now, we talked about virtual queues. There's also something called a CRM queue. So these are basically the queues that are set up in your CRM system. We can also ingest and bring them into SupportLogic. Now, besides that, we can't really configure much. The CRM queue is exactly what you have set up in your CRM. But what we can do is build virtual queues on top of the CRM queues. We can further narrow down you can further narrow down based on the case metadata and create additional virtual queues. Now, here is an example of a virtual queue. So this is based on some case metadata here, a simple one, but you can have more sophisticated conditions based on which your queues are set up. For example, here, this is based on your case priority. If it is high or urgent, you can see the priority. So it is selected. So your queue is set up based on that criteria. So every time a case comes in with a high or an urgent priority, it is going to qualify to go into this queue. Not just that, we are also going to assign agents to this particular queue. So I can identify all either individual agents, virtual teams, or virtual orgs and add them to the queue. And there's also a concept called fallback. Maybe you have a primary group of people that you want to assign. And if, let's say, none of them are available, only then you want to fall back to another group of agents. So there's this possibility for you to define buckets to group your agents based on who should go first, second, and so on. And then you can see the toggle here, which is for auto assignment. Now, the moment you enable auto assignment for a queue, every time a case comes in and it qualifies and it falls in that queue, it will now be automatically assigned. And it will be assigned to one of these people that have been added to that queue. But again, we are providing more configuration for you to control how this auto assignment should work. But let's say you figure that, yes, I want automatic assignment to work. I want to set some limits on the maximum number of cases per agent per day. You can specify that. Or let's say you want to say that I don't want my agents to be evaluated based on assignment hours, but I want to do it based on working hours. You can specify that as well. So there's some level of configurability that can be defined even for your automatic case assignment. It is not once you turn on automatic, you have no control. You still have a lot of control to determine how you want the auto assignment to work. All right, now that we have seen what kind of setup is required for auto assignment to work, let's look at all the recently assigned cases. So I'm coming back to the assignment board where we started off in the beginning. Now I have moved to the recently assigned tab here, and we will see the cases that have been assigned in the last 3 days. They could have been assigned through a manual assignment. It could have been through an automatic assignment, or even an assignment that happened in your CRM. So we see all of those cases that were assigned in the last 3 days. Let's pick one. So this case was assigned to Jacob automatically by SupportLogic, and it was through this queue. So the case was assigned to CRM queue, and Jacob was one of the agents on that queue. And the automatic it was automatically assigned to Jacob, probably because he was the first one or rated the highest. But let's say you want to validate that. You can do that by looking at all the other recommended agents at the time of assignment. Again, it's not a black box. We tell you, we assessed all these agents and we picked Jacob, and here is why. All right, so that kind of concludes our ability to do manual assignment, automatic assignment, and all the setup that would be required to enable you to have a very successful assignment in place. With that, I'm going to switch back to the the presentation here. Like I mentioned earlier, SupportLogic routing agent is being used by several customers already. And this is one case study that we have from Coveo. As you can see from the numbers, there's a 53% reduction in MTTR, 56% reduction in escalations, 31% increase in same-day resolution. And all of this is attributed to the use of SupportLogic's intelligent case assignment. All right, key takeaways. It's really time to reassess how we do assignment. The traditional methods are no longer, it's too rigid. We need to get away from that and look into an intelligent AI-driven case assignment mechanism. And we at SupportLogic give you that capability with a multimodal agent, which not only does automatic assignment, but also allows you to do manual assignment. And not just that, it's never a black box. You can always understand why certain assignments